What's up, guys? Welcome back for episode 3 of the Keep It Down podcast. Joined here by my two co hosts, Ty. How's it going, TC?
What's up, everybody? Good to be back. Episode 3 of the pod.
And the oldest, but not least important, brother, Logan.
What's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome back to episode 3.
Yeah, just to start things off real quick, the feedback, you guys have been crushing it. We just passed 100 plays on the podcast. You guys are crushing it, all across Spotify, Zencaster, all that stuff. On socials, you can follow us on Instagram at Keep It Down Pod on Instagram. We've been posting some stories and posts and stuff of relevant stuff we're talking about, all that stuff. And then in there we have our link tree, so you know where to find the podcast. So it takes you right to Zencaster or Spotify. Some people have been trouble finding it when it's not posted on a story or whatever. So if you go to our Instagram in our bio, you'll see the link tree link. Click on that, take you right to Spotify or Zencaster, however you want to listen. And speaking about feedback, I got some feedback from some of the boys at work. Shout out Boy, shout out Ian. Ian said, the Velveeta cheese with the salsa cheese dip was a staple in his household growing up.
Thank you.
Yeah. We couldn't have been the only ones, right?
I would hope not. I was going on a limb last time. I was really hoping that we weren't the only ones, but I'm very glad to hear that someone else rolled with that.
So he said that he was rocking with it. It was a staple, and he was rocking with it, or he just had it all the time.
No, absolutely. He said he was rocking with it. He said that that's exactly how they made it in his household as well. So
it's the way. It's the way.
Yeah. No, yeah. It definitely was a staple in our household as well. We were talking a little bit before the pod about some other things that we were getting into as kids, not just the nacho cheese. I think Schmag had a story about some tennis rackets and plums that he was wanting to get into and share with you guys.
Yeah. So, with the fall season coming in, we used to have this giant plum tree in our backyard. Well, plum and apple tree, but mainly the plum trees has to do with the story here. But anyway, all the plums just used to fall all over the backyard of our house. And as kids, just being bored, and we didn't really want to have to pick them up, so we came up with this game where we would take a tennis racket and we'd pick the plums up off the ground and hit them with the tennis racket out of the backyard, over the alley, probably, I don't know, a street or two over. And I guess it was just an easy way to get rid of all the plums instead of having to pick them up. But yeah, I don't know exactly like who was the first one to grab the tennis racket and the plum or anything like that. But yeah, reckless stuff. Like thinking about doing that stuff now just stresses me out, or my kids even doing that kind of stuff just stresses me out. But back then it just seemed like a good idea.
Dude, well, a funny little side note about that story is, if you guys remember right, those are some thrift store tennis rackets that we were using. You remember those?
That's
They were
right.
like the 1980s or something, like super low quality. So we said, you know what better use for this than to get rid of the plums that we had in the backyard?
And I think they were made completely of wood too. They weren't even like the new composite or metal or whatever they're made out of now. They were like the old school wooden ones that we just gotten on a whim from the thrift store, and that's what we used for our racket of choice back in the day.
Yeah, and honestly, that wasn't the only story involving the fruit trees in the backyard, because I remember coming home from Bass Pro Shops one time with a machete that was like $15, and we started out tossing apples to each other, and we'd slice them in half, kind of like Step Brothers style, when they're in the garage and they're slicing everything. Kind of the same deal going on. It started out just tossing them to each other, but of course, boys being boys, eventually you were having to defend yourself with the machete because they'd be chucking them at you, and you're trying to slice them before they got to you. So, yeah, man, all sorts of shenanigans going on in the Curry household, especially in the backyard.
yeah, whenever we're talking about mischief that we were getting into when we were younger, the first thing that comes to mind is the poop bowl for me.
Oh
Oh,
gosh.
this is a great story.
Set the stage of the poop bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a snow day, right? No one's at school. So of course, but it's a snow day where there's not enough snow to close the roads or anything like that. So of course, your friends can still get to your house. All the cronies can still link up at the house. So everyone comes over, we're playing a little football game as we do, we're always outside playing football, being active, all that stuff. And so, if I remember right, Schmog, I think you were in high school,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Ty was like either the end of middle school or early high school. And so I was
Yeah, I
probably
think
like,
I was gonna say I think either eighth or maybe freshman year.
yeah, that's kind of what I remember. But yeah, so we're playing football as we do, and the ground is completely saturated with snow, of course. So the ground's wet; it's a sloppy mess. And as we're playing, everyone's just getting muddier and muddier as we're playing and going on and tackling each other in the front yard. And then we get done playing football and go to walk in our house, and our sweet mom is standing at the door, and she takes one sniff of the air that is floating around the front door as we're about to walk in, and she said, "Everyone take their clothes off." And so we found out very quickly that we were actually covered in dog feces, not mud like we thought. So
Well,
um,
yeah, because you can't really tell because the snow's covering everything up. Right,
yeah,
and I'm sure it had to have been Logan's week to pick up the dog poop that week because it wasn't
oh,
done.
Oh,
for
which means
sure.
for sure I didn't do it. It was gonna snow. You can't pick it up when it's gonna snow. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, many a chore list that went up on the fridge, and not a lot of chores were getting done. So
Yeah, dude, I just remember those gruelers that Dad would give us before we went to the desert, because it'd be like a week or two ahead of time. So it'd be like 45 things we had to do. So
Hmm.
naturally, we waited till the last weekend before we were leaving. And so
Absolutely.
we'd just be busting our ass for 2 whole days on the weekend because obviously you don't play in sports or school during the week. So,
yeah, dude, I was gonna say we had the perfect front yard for like the little mini football games. It was like
Hmm.
what, maybe like 15 to 20 yards long, and like perfectly flat the whole way. So you
Yeah,
could really
and
start routing each other up.
you have to remember the walkway, the little concrete walkway right in the middle. Perfect first down marker. You could play with just one first down and you got to score.
hmm
Yeah, it was truly the perfect yard for some mini football games for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say the uniforms we were rocking that day were not so great. But I wanted to get into a new segment, and I wanted to give a. It's gonna be a 5-star rating system for the Oregon uniforms worn each week. So I want to get your guys' take on last week's unis. How many stars out of 5 are you giving the duck egg uniforms?
I'll go first on this one. So I'm going to give this year's duck egg. I really like the uniforms. I think they look really clean. I think the white with all the speckles and the speckle kind of highlights on the helmet looks really good. I did, however, like it more when they played on a grass field. Last year when they played at UCLA, as the game goes on, you get some green and some other colors just from the grass and the colors on the field, and it kind of adds a little bit more to the uniform, which is super crazy to think that the people over at Oregon are coming up with stuff like that and kind of innovating the football uniform as we know it. Um, but this year's, I'm going to give a solid 3 out of 5 stars on the 2022 Oregon Duck Egg uniforms.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna have to agree with you on the 3-star rating. Just it, they're not bad. They're not bad at all. Obviously, they look super clean. Whenever Oregon takes the field, we're gonna be the better looking team uniform wise, right? We always have the edge in that department, which is a blessing and a curse. When we're winning with the cool uniforms on, everything's peachy. But when we lose with the cool uniforms on, then everyone's coming at us and being like, "Oh, you guys lost the game, but you sure did look pretty." And so it's always just a slap in the face. But no matter what, we're always coming out looking swaggy. But for me, they're not my favorite. They're not my least favorite. So going with a solid 3 stars on this one.
I'm pretty in the same realm as you boys here. I give it 3.5 stars due to the fact that A, it's not original, which, I mean, if you're an Oregon football fan, is kind of the shtick, besides the basic green or yellow, which they typically only wear once a year for either one of those. But anything outside of that, they usually only wear once. So the fact that it's not original gives it a little dip for me. And then, yeah, like Schmag was saying, I think those grass stains just add a whole different level to it that makes it a lot more pretty and all kind of flow together and be one unit. But That's also why it is in the three range for me, is because just the way that, the speckles are on the jersey, then they're on the duck egg, and the wings on the helmet tie back into the jersey numbers, and then the cleats throw elements back to the jersey numbers, and so yeah, I don't know the name of the dude or team of people that designs uniforms at Oregon, but they're doing something right.
Yeah, it's in the details, man. Um, yeah, every week I send the uniforms to my fiance Harper, and she gives them a grade as well. And there's no game this week, but the uniforms I'm going to be wearing next week at UCLA, she gave a very high grade. So a little bit of a teaser there for the 5-star rating system for not this coming weekend, but the next weekend. I think those are going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's funny, TC. You mentioned when when Oregon looks good and they lose, it's it kind of makes you forget the uniform almost. Like Oregon football had a tough few years there where, I mean, they still had great looking uniforms, but we just don't remember those, those as well as, say when, Justin Herbert was in his prime. We all remember those uniforms because the team was good and they were winning. But, when Vernon Adams was the quarterback and things were a little bit more rough and we had some coaching changes and, we had some stuff going on there, those uniforms we kind of forget about some of those old style, with the flying duck on the helmet, the stripe down the middle of the helmet and all that kind of stuff. It's just funny. There's just so many different options, and there's been different eras of all the Oregon uniforms. So I think it's really interesting that you brought that up for sure.
Yeah, and kind of staying in the realms of uniform and style, I'm seeing on the notes here we got a little secret segment.
Yeah. So I think it was in the first week of the podcast we talked about um, Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins, and his current thing going on, and we're kind of talking about the advances and how the equipment has changed safety wise and all that, which is great, and it just kind of had me thinking, they're making all these changes to like all the safety and stuff, but like the overall like style of like football and what football players like to wear, on the field and everything has changed so much. I mean, if you look at like old game film from like the 80s and 90s, I mean, those guys look like giant rhinos running around and the pads are huge, and then it kind of seems like every year the pads get smaller and smaller and the accessories everyone wears are kind of different. And I've seen some of the styles, um, from the eras that I really like, kind of start to come back a little bit as far as like what players are wearing on the field. Um, so my question to you two is, what is your favorite era of like football accessories?
Oh, this one's going to be easy for me. It's going to be the early 2000s. Okay? Early two just give me the 2000s in general, okay?
Okay, so
Um
give me like a head to toe of like your like ideal, like what like you liked as like an overall look.
okay, well, starting off with the cleats. What were they? The Vapors, and they had the white toe, and it came
Nike
up
Nike Vapor Carbons.
the Nike Vapor Carbons. Everyone was wearing them. Back in the day, No Sean Moreno, Georgia Bulldog, he was rocking them, jumping over people, jumping from the 5 yard line into the end zone. Just absolutely iconic. Didn't pan out as well in the NFL, but man, those cleats, I remember just being tough back in the day. Everyone wanted those cleats, as well as the Michael Vick cleats.
Mm-hmm.
Forgotten about.
Yeah.
But back in the early youth football days, man, everyone was rocking those. Um, so that has to be the toes.
Mm-hmm.
And up top, it's the dark visor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dark visor really started coming into play. You think of Ray Lewis, you think of Brian Dawkins. Intimidating guys always seem to be wearing that really dark visor, and they look like menaces out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Besides that, the sock game was definitely changing. It wasn't just the knee highs anymore. People putting their own swag to it. The gloves were going crazy. Definitely some style in the gloves. So for me, man, it's got to be the 2000s because that's when stuff really started to change, and I started paying attention to football. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the guys that I look up to that were rocking that stuff.
Right, right, right. Chach, what about you? What do you think?
I'm gonna have to kind of lean more towards the 2010s, but not too recent. So for cleats, Um, I think they were the Nike Vapor Untouchable ones that came out. Oregon Ohio State National Championship. They featured the backward swoosh for the maybe the first time. I'm not sure. Might have popped
Hmm.
out before that, but and like the you know how the cleat kind of goes to a sock. It's almost like a soccer boot kind of thing. I think it looks really clean and it kind of makes the whole foot to leg to the whole upper body look kind of like one seamless thing rather than back in the day it was cleat sock pants as it goes up, but it's called kind of one. It's almost like a morph suit kind of thing, but not too corny with it.
Yeah.
um and then I what I think is underappreciated is the loose untucked undershirt but with no sleeves,
Mm,
almost like it's like a tank top or something like that. So
yeah. Yeah.
like Darren Carrington back in the day, famous Oregon Duck, when he hit the whip in the Rose Bowl,
Uh-huh.
with the kind of flowy little things coming off of his jersey, that always looked cool to me. Um, and then yeah, dark visors. Even want to throw it back a little more on the dark visor realm and into the custom face mask world. Like when you see
Mm,
these pictures of dudes at training camp, Justin Tuck, Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs with the looks like they're wearing a Knights helmet, and gosh, those dudes are just next level, man. But yeah, I mean, anything like even watching Friday Night Lights growing up and seeing the Carter dudes wearing the colored visors and all that stuff. So I'd probably have to say kind of earlier 2010s, maybe teens if you want to call it that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's changed just so much, and I really like that you brought up the customizable face mask thing because when that came onto the scene and people started wearing those big grills and all that kind of stuff, it changed everything. Yeah, to me personally, it's kind of funny because like one of my favorite eras of like what people used to wear, you kind of see it coming back a little, and Justin Flo on the Oregon Ducks actually rocks one of these, the butterfly collar. I don't know if I wore one for most of my football career. And I gotta say that era, Ty, I think I gotta agree with you. Like that like 2008, 2009, like you had the vapor carbons. A prime example of honestly what I think like was just so awesome. Um, Back in the day, TCU had a linebacker. Tank Carter. I don't know if any of you guys were watching him play number 43. That guy had the Revolution helmet, which I loved when it came out at the time. Of course, now Riddell is making all sorts of stuff. But he had the new Revolution helmet, and he had the butterfly collar and those thin wristbands, those thin little sweatbands, and it was the pot. And you kind of see it again today too. Like you have guys wearing like 3 or 4 of them on their arm, and they got them on their legs and stuff, and the tape on the wrist that went halfway up your forearm, and kind of color coordinating all of it. Yeah, I would. I mean, for me, that's what it was. Like I think about like on like video games, football video games, when you do create a character, like what you put on your guy, and like that's exactly how I would do it. Chrome visor, dark black visor, and all the eye black too. Eye black, honestly, and I wore it my senior year, and I don't know how much you guys wore it, but it makes such a difference. But you can't overdo it. I feel like there's a fine line of having it just right, but not overdoing it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a detail that you can add in there. Um, is there anything that you guys can think of that you're happy that went out of style? Because for me, it's the classic neck roll, right? Like
Right.
late
Like the
90s
cowboy
style.
collar type.
No, not necessarily the cowboy collar, the one that just sat on the shoulder pads,
Yeah, I
you
think that
know, and it
isn't
was
that.
and it was just a roll,
It
you
was
know.
like Eric Dickerson World War One, the white
Mike
one that.
Okay, okay. I
Mike Allstott, you know, it
Mm,
just made it look too clunky, I think. I don't
I
know,
mean,
just never a good look for me.
yeah, it was kind of like the style. Like they wore the inside the pads, like underneath the jersey, big. They look like a moving rhinoceros running, running on the field. Which I don't, it could have been the style at the time. And yeah, the cowboy collar too. That was a good one. I Zach Thomas from the Miami Dolphins, number 54 back in the day. Yeah,
I was gonna,
How'd you feel about the Cam Newtons?
loved him, loved him.
dude.
They were your joints?
The fact that they came out with so many colorways, like
Hmm.
you go on Eastbay and there's like 50 different options. Like,
Yeah, I Sorry, Chacha. I wasn't a
Good.
huge fan of like the Batman ones or like the. I know Superman obviously is Cam's kind of thing, but I didn't really like the superhero kind of ones. My favorite were like the black on the top and then or like the your team color black, green, whatever it was, and then white on the bottom, just because it looked like a tape spatted cleat, which I thought was cool, and you'd have like some of the support of that, but you'd have like the look of that, which I thought was really clean.
Yeah, 100%. But you had to have the socks kind of popping at the top.
Yeah.
Because with no
Yep.
socks, you're looking goofy, man.
Mm-hmm.
So fine line on those.
Yeah,
Yep.
you either got to meet it with tights or socks or something. You
Yeah.
got to cover that up. Also
Yeah.
another thing I want to add real quick, is the like are they head hoods? I don't know. But like you see dudes from like Penn State and it's freezing cold and you can see everyone's breath and they're wearing all white and then they have those cool little white head covers sticking out of the bottom of their helmet and I always think
Mm-hmm.
that looks really cool too. So
Yeah. I am to I guess answer your first question that you had asked about stuff that you're glad kind of isn't in style. I only see, a handful of guys every weekend wearing them, but the baggy long sleeves, I am just not a fan of. I don't think you like sleeves look super. It's not about look. I know it's about like function too, but to me personally, the no sleeves are the way to go.
Yeah, 100%. I think it has to be well done to pull it off.
Yeah,
You
it's
have
tough,
to have the flow coming out the bottom of the jersey, or else it ain't gonna look right. You know what I
right?
mean?
Yeah,
So you gotta kind of finish it off, or else it's gonna look goofy.
yeah.
Um, anyone in today's game that you wanted to shout out for always having a swaggy look? For me, I'm rocking with Jamal Adams. Um, I
Hmm.
know everyone's got the different opinions on him as a player, but yeah, all the armbands and he's always got the swag going. So, is there anyone that you guys see on Sundays playing, or I guess maybe even Saturdays for the college game that you guys are like, yeah, that looks clean right there?
yeah, I was gonna say Demario Davis on the Saints. He was rocking like the Icarus, whatever the print's called sleeve. It's like the gold and black pattern. Always wearing a dark visor, and the dreadlocks always seem to make a uniform look scarier. I don't know how, but it just does. That's just how it is. And then he's rocking, always like a Jordan 11 player edition cleat or something like that, which also I think is a really cool thing that they've done is bring back some of
Hmm.
these classic cleats that are Jordans, but they're obviously football cleats. So definitely something to keep an eye on and as we're moving forward here.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I mean, for me, I mentioned him earlier, but Justin Flo. Not only do I like the way he plays, it's kind of more of an old school kind of linebacker thing that you would have seen, like back in the early 2010s, 2011. Um, but I mean, just he kind of looks the part and plays the part. But then also his counterpart Noah Sewell, also good with the style and good with the armbands and all that stuff. And I mean, my opinion is always is that like if you're gonna wear the stuff, like you gotta be able to back it up too. Like you can't just be the guy out there that has all the new stuff, but then you don't kind of back it up. So I feel like for sure an intimidation thing. Like you see like a stud linebacker that looks like that. I mean, he's the guy, and you always gotta be on the lookout for that guy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and then you throw the little towel in there as well. The towel,
Hmm.
I can't believe we didn't mention the towel, man.
I know.
The towel game it can make or break the whole look. Um, but one thing that was popping into my head, we were talking about style. Y'all remember D'Anthony Thomas, Kansas State running back the first touchdown,
Yeah.
and
Oh
then
yeah.
after the game, everyone found out he was rocking the gold watch.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was going crazy. Yeah, changing the game for sure.
I mean that's a good story you're going to tell later on in life, and nobody even notices, and then he's going to be able to, tell people later on after the fact nobody even knew, and then there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, thanks guys for your opinion on that. It just crossed my mind the other day. I thought this is something we need to bring up. So, of course, how you look isn't everything. I mean, you have to be able to play well in football too. But if you, how does the old saying go? If you look good, you feel good, and if you feel good, you play good, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually kind of a nice segue to a question that I wanted to open up to you guys. We are talking about past looks that we like. What about past running backs that we liked? I want you guys to give me your top five list on the running backs since the year 2000. And there's going to be some bangers in here, so I'm kind of interested to see. I think I knew who's going to be at the top of some of these lists, but who made the top five for you guys?
I think we should kind of go into carousel here. Like we'll each give our number five, and then we'll just kind of trot down the list, and so we
Mhm.
don't have to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all of us, you know. So,
No, yeah, I'm down.
so I'll just start it off here. I got a sleeper pick at number five here, boys. It's gonna be Reggie Bush.
Oh,
So I know
okay.
this is a little later in the 2000s. Maybe you consider him 2010, which is a couple of my dudes are in that same kind of realm. So, but yeah, no, Reggie Bush, man, it seemed like he was one of those dudes that when he's on the field, he's making an impact, and he can score from anywhere on the field at any point in time. We saw what he did at USC, running all over the field, catching passes. Then he goes to the Saints and picks off from the same exact spot. I know you guys know the little still picture of him in the playoffs against the Dolphins. Just looks like a flying eagle out there scoring touchdowns and stuff. So yeah, I got Reggie Bush at five here, boys.
Yeah, Reggie definitely had one of the craziest college tapes I've ever seen, but also high school tapes. If you ever seen his high school highlight tape, it is ridiculous. It looks like everyone else is playing in slow motion.
Mhm.
Um, Schmug, who you got at number five?
So number five is a guy that I think one of the first times I remember watching the NFL Combine, and you see fast people, but then you see like fast people, like they make fast people look not fast. Um, Drafted 2008, Chris Johnson at number five.
CJ2K.
I mean, like and my list is kind of built upon like guys that like as a defense, like you plan your scheme around. Like you're not planning it around the quarterback. You're not planning it around any wide receivers. You see who the running back is, and your scheme is based off if that guy's suiting up this weekend. Chris Johnson is one of those guys. Broke the rushing record. Um, for while he's playing with the Titans, went on to the Cardinals after that, and then still had productive seasons. Usually when guys spend a long time in one place and then they get traded to another team, their production kind of falls off. Not every time, most times you see that, but Chris Johnson continued to put up 1,000-yard seasons even after he was traded, up until he retired. So number five, Chris Johnson.
Yeah, man, that's a great pick, and I think that's why this list is going to be kind of fun because there's a little bit of bias that goes into it, right? Who did you enjoy watching play the most?
Right.
Um, and for me, you guys know it's all about the yellow and black. And so for me, I felt like five was the right spot to put my bias pick in.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go with Le'Veon Bell, and I know, the
Oh,
longevity, the longevity wasn't there.
I thought you were going the bus there.
Not
or
right.
Rashad Mendenhall.
Ah,
Okay, both bangers, right?
Right.
But
Okay, but go ahead, because I know where you're going with this, and I like it. Go ahead.
yeah.
when he was in his prime, it, he was different, right? And so that's what I'm going off is these guys' primes, right? This guy was unstoppable. Him and Steph Curry kind of came into their respective sports at the same time, and people were literally talking about these guys are both changing the way that their respective sports are being played.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's impact on the field was nuts. He had 8,000 yards from scrimmage. He averaged 128.9 yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
That's an average. Insane.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, two-time All-Pro, and like I said, at one time was considered to be the equivalent to Steph Curry in football. You line him out wide at wide receiver, and he was catching passes out of the backfield. An absolute monster. The patience, the vision. I had to give a shout out to my man Le'Veon Bell.
Love that pick.
All right, sliding
All right.
into the four slot here. In my four slot, I've got Sean Alexander.
Oh, all right. All right.
Um, Only played for 8 years, 9,400 yards. Had like 8.7 yards a carry over 8 years. That's insane. That means for 8 years, every time he touched the football, he damn near got a first down. which is nuts to me. But also, see, I saw some scoffs when I mentioned this pick. It's a little higher because I was a little younger and wasn't quite into football when Alexander was playing in his super prime yet. So that's why he's a little higher in the list. I know. But so that's what I got it for here, boys.
Schmog, who'd you have it for?
So number 4 is going to be my bias pick here. Number 4, I have Clinton Portis, drafted 2002. We were just talking about the 2001 Miami Hurricanes team, which Portis was a part of. Yeah, Clinton Portis actually started his career with Denver. Um, started his career with Denver and then was in a trade with Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey finished his career in Denver, and Clinton Portis ended up with the Washington Redskins. I'm going to say that because that was the team at the time. Clinton Portis was one of the first NFL jerseys that I ever owned. I just love the way he ran the ball. Was healthy most of the time. Had to retire a little bit early due to some concussion scares, stuff like that. And I think what really sold me on Clinton Portis was watching that game right after Sean Taylor passed away, and Clinton Portis scores that first touchdown at FedEx Field, and he's wearing the Sean Taylor tribute shirt underneath his pads. And I mean, just a good dude, a great football player, a great leader. Yeah, my bias pick at number 4, Clinton Portis.
Yeah, it's funny because some of these guys, no matter how great they were, they're almost like forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to think because of how dominant they were. And going back to Chach, the reason I gave you a look when you had Sean Alexander at number 4 is because I also had Sean Alexander at number 4.
Wow.
Um, First word that comes to mind when I think about him was unstoppable. You had mentioned it, almost 9 yards per carry. Always falling forward, a dominant force for those Seahawks teams. I remember the Steelers matching up with them in the Super Bowl. Luckily, we were able to slow him down enough to get the dub. But what he did was just absolutely remarkable. Won MVP in 2005. Also led the league with 1,880 yards and has the single season rushing touchdown record at 27. So just an absolutely incredible run from Sean Alexander, definitely when he was in his prime. Um, Chach, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here.
All right, at 3, piggybacking off Schmag's pick, I got Clinton Portis at 3. 9,923 yards over his career, 81.2 yards per game. That's super impressive. Only 7 seasons. Again, I think, as we get into the top portion here, we get into some dudes that, at least on my list, that, played some longer careers and stuff. 7 seasons. That's 7 times 16. That's, just over 100 games, maybe, something around there, and 10,000 yards. Like that, these numbers are just insane. The impact that these dudes had on the game, they're, right at the turn, not to call it a turn of the century, but, when the running back wasn't just going to get 3 yards, they're going to run for 8. And guess what? If he catches your secondary lacking, he's going to burn them on the top end too. So, yeah, I got Clinton Portis at 3 here, boys.
Schmug.
Alrighty, so my number 3 pick, and this is a guy that I watched run the ball, and I put myself in the position of the defender, and just thinking to myself, I'm really not trying to tackle that guy. Drafted 2000, Baltimore Ravens, Jamal Lewis. I remember watching this guy play, and he was just a mean running machine. I mean, that dude had no issue hitting, and like he played against like some of the linebackers that are going to the Hall of Fame if they're not there already. I mean, Brian Urlacher, Zach Thomas, Teddy Bruschi, Mike Vrabel, and this dude's running at them like full steam ahead, no reservations at all, no glove wearing, wrist tape, like just a mean running guy. And again, one of those guys that you have to, your defensive scheme just, it relies on knowing where that guy is and then what he's going to do. So Jamal Lewis at 3.
Yeah, I think it's part of what makes these lists so interesting is because both those guys are so dominant. You had mentioned Jamal Lewis and Clinton Portis on your guys' list, and it's almost like you feel bad when other people say their name and you didn't have them on your list. But
Yeah.
this is a tough list, man. But number 3 for me, this might be a shocker. I'm going with LaShawn McCoy. Shady. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah, I know. We had talked about some power backs, but this man, oh, the shiftiness in the open field was unreal, making people look stupid out there. and for some reason, he was the only person to have footing in snow games. Just seemed to absolutely go off every time there was a snow game. Um, Two-time All Pro, six-time Pro Bowl, six 1,000-yard seasons, and people forget about his dominance with the Buffalo Bills. When you think about Shady, you think about the Eagles.
Hmm.
But man was popping off on the Bills as well. Definitely a long and very illustrious career for old Shady McCoy. So he's got my number three because I'd be scared to tackle him for a different reason because I'd feel like I might just tackle some air if I was trying to get that guy on the ground.
This is getting harder and harder here, boys. Moving into number two, I've got LaDainian Tomlinson. 1,400 yards. Weird stat that I noticed when I was doing some research on him: seven passing touchdowns.
Oh, all
Seven
right.
passing, yeah, kind of strange. So I don't know if he played some quarterback when he was younger or what, but and
Could
we
that
are
been
talking
sorry, Josh? Could that have been during the Wildcat era that came about for a bit? There was it maybe some of those during that maybe.
very possibly.
Yeah, I think some of them were from the Wildcat, but I remember the pitch bat pass being his main
Uh
shtick too. I mean, he was nice with the flick of the wrist there.
huh.
Yeah, and we were talking about style and swag a little earlier, and he was always rocking the black visor with some custom face mask with the bulldog nose and all that stuff. So he's kind of the inventor of that, if you will. So super great running back. Like I said, 14,000 yards, damn near. So I got LT at two here, boys.
Yeah, you can't mention LT without talking about the ball flip, right? The iconic ball flip when he was going in the end zone. Match that with the swag he was wearing, and everyone was wanting to watch.
All right. So my number two. I talked about guys that played with one team for a long time, went to another team. Um, this guy, I mean, some people listening to this podcast might not even know that this guy played for two, actually three NFL teams. Marshawn Lynch, I have at number two. Started his career with the Buffalo Bills. Then went to the Seahawks, which is where most people know Marshawn Lynch from, and then ended his career, hometown with Oakland at the time. But we're going to talk about the not handing the ball to him in the Super Bowl when the Patriots intercepted on the 1 yard line, I guess. But everyone in the country watching that game knows, like, and still, if you talk to anyone about it, why did they run the ball? The most dominant back in the NFL. Like, he's gonna get yards every single play. We remember the play against the Saints, when he broke 500 tackles on the way to the end zone and then did it again against the Arizona Cardinals years after that. Just a hard runner, hard guy to tackle. Marshawn Lynch at number two.
No, I think that's a great pick. That Saints run, the Beast Quake. I remember I was standing on my couch with my hands on my head saying, "Oh my gosh," over and over again because the play seemed like it went on for
Years.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the commentary, "Oh my God, what a run! What a run!" And you still go back and watch that play and still get excited about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And then one more side note on Marshawn Lynch. Did you guys see Richard Sherman getting some PTSD last week when Russ didn't hand the ball off
I
in their
did.
Thursday night matchup? They what are your opinions? Run the ball, run
Yeah.
the ball. He was going
Yeah.
off, man. So
Yeah.
he's still feeling that one.
Yeah.
Um,
Go ahead,
uh,
Ty.
no, diving back into the list here. Number two, I also had LaDainian Tomlinson. Um, just Yeah, he was just that guy when he was with the Chargers, no doubt about it. Finished the career with the Jets, I believe. Getting a little older when he played for the Jets, but again, a long, productive career. The man averaged 1,900 scrimmage yards and 17 touchdowns in his first 9 seasons, and that's an average. This man was going nutty. Um, and let's not forget, he also led college in rushing 2 times. So he did this for so long, you know. I mean, in college and then into the pros. 5-time Pro Bowler and MVP in 2006 for a running back to get the MVP award. You're just going crazy, man. So um, now for the moment everyone's been waiting for. The number
Okay,
one picks.
before you say your number one, Chach, does anyone have an honorable mention that they want to add to their list that you just couldn't, that you had a hard time putting on, or maybe he missed the year 2000 by a year or two? Does anyone have an honorable mention that they want to throw out before we say our number ones? Because I have an honorable mention.
A few come to mind. Off my list was I didn't put Marshawn on mine, and it was hard not to, especially with Le'Veon being my number 5 pick.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit controversial.
Sure.
Um, a weird one, kind of, but Zeke, man. When he first came into the league, it was turn around and hand the ball off to Zeke, man. Uh, so those two guys came to my mind first when you asked that.
What about you, Chach? You have any honorable mentions?
Um, I was gonna say Eddie George. He almost took my number
Mm,
5 spot. He has incredible stats. Just one of those dudes, physical dudes, run right at you the whole game. Um, yeah, I almost put him at 5, and then also Edrin James from the Colts teams
mm-hmm.
back in the day. He was also
Yep.
one of my just off the list. Yeah, and then you
Yeah.
said Marshawn. I was like, damn, that's a good one too. So there's so
Uh-huh.
many out there, dude.
Yeah, for those of you like listening, it is not easy to narrow it down to five just running backs. There are just you can go through lists and you can say, "Dang it, I forgot he played. I forgot he played. I forgot that's when he played, and I forgot about all of his stats and his records and all that." Um, it's really tough to narrow it down to five. I was gonna put someone at number five who was drafted in 1996, technically not even a running back, fullback, Mike Allstott. I know we had mentioned him earlier about the neck roll, but I remember watching Mike Allstott play, and not only could he block, and he was, putting those giant linebackers on their butts. I mean, he ran the ball hard too, and could catch the ball out of the backfield from a power I offense, which was the offense at the time. So my honorable mention is Mike Allstott. Um, just man, watching that guy play was just so much fun back in the day.
Yeah, just a couple more that were in the mix for me. Jamal Charles, Corey Dillon, Marshall Falk. I don't know if that would have counted. I know he's a little bit late '90s, early 2000s, so right there in the mix. Um, I know I'm forgetting some more, but man,
Yeah,
this list was tough. This list was
yeah.
tough. But Chach, who took the crown for you?
All right. Played many, many years with one team. Flopped around a little bit at the end. Coming in at number 1, Adrian Peterson.
Oh,
14,918 yards, 120 touchdowns on the ground. Just insane capability. We keep talking about dudes at the kind of turn of the game, and I'd say he's probably the standout catalyst for me, being a dude that can kind of bring both those elements of running right through the teeth of the defense, and then, you get him on a sweep or a stretch or something, and he burns your whole back end for 60 yards down the field. And so just truly electric, big part of my childhood watching Adrian Peterson play. So Adrian Peterson gets the one from me.
it's a tough one, and I had to leave Adrian Peterson off my list, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. It hurt a lot. My number one, Ladainian Tomlinson. I mean, just revolutionized. There were good running backs. I mean, Emmett Smith, Eddie George. We've been talking about these guys that used to play, and Ladainian Tomlinson just did it in a different way. And mind you, he came out of college and he didn't skip a beat going into the NFL. He didn't have uh, an adjustment period. He didn't have any of that. He came straight in and was putting up nearly the same numbers that he was putting up at TCU in college. So my number one goes to LT.
Yeah, definitely like that one. I'm gonna have to piggyback off of Garrett here because Adrian Peterson, AP all day. That's gonna be my number one pick, man. A man that fast should not be that big and that shifty.
Yeah,
He's just too big to be doing some of the stuff he was doing out there. Number one, you're not gonna catch him in a foot race, and number two, if you did, he's probably gonna run you over anyways.
right,
Um,
right.
Garrett already mentioned some of the stats, but he got an MVP award. He was the last running back to do so. Some of the highlight plays that stick out in my mind, um, he had the gnarly stiff arm against the Browns on the sideline, and then just kept running for a touchdown.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, trucked the Steelers defender after a little zig route right there in the middle of the field.
Right.
That was gnarly. Uh, and then, of course, he was a Blair Walsh missed field goal away from taking down the Legion of Boom pretty much by himself on a cold, cold playoff day. So
Yeah,
the dominance that guy had is just unmatched in my mind.
yeah,
Scary guy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That
I was honestly kind of surprised. I thought we'd all have super different lists, especially you two. You guys are a bit older. You guys might have some different point of view, some older dudes, but we were all more similar than I thought we'd be, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. And some of it's biased, right? Like I said,
yeah,
like it's who you enjoyed watching play, and then a little bit of what Schmog had said, who you're game planning for, who scares you when you're looking at the roster, right? You're like, oh god, that guy's speed or that guy's power is just going to be an issue for me when Sunday
yeah.
rolls around.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna throw in a couple names, and I know that you guys forgot about these couple backs I'm about to say. Number one, Priest Holmes, Kansas City. I know
Yep,
you heard his name about 6,000 times on Sports Center growing up. Steven Jackson, the St. Louis Rams, also a guy just ran the ball incredibly hard. Um, man,
Jerome Bettis,
Jerome
Yeah, the
Bettis,
bus.
DeMarco Murray, Rashad Mendenhall. I mean, Alfred
Marion
Morris.
Barber, R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Marion
Oh,
Barber.
you know one that was hard to keep off the list is that man Tiki Barber.
Oh,
Yeah,
I almost put him at
he,
five also.
yeah, Tiki Barber. Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of Barry Sandered it a little bit when he kind of he retired right in his prime. So
Hmm.
I think if the career hadn't been cut short, he would definitely have been on these top five lists for us, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, these top five lists are fun. I think well maybe we'll have to maybe we'll put an Instagram poll up or an Instagram post or something like that. Maybe we'll take suggestions on like on what position we should go through next and give a top five on. I know that everyone listening probably has, similar opinions, different opinions. There's probably people that we're leaving out that it's just so egregious and we're gonna feel bad for later. But yeah, maybe we should start a little Instagram poll or something, and everyone listening can let us know what position we should move to next and give our top five on.
Yeah, while we're kind of in that realm of feedback from Instagram, I actually took to the streets of Instagram earlier this week and got the audience to ask us a couple questions. So, got three or four here that I thought were good. So let's kind of go one by one here and get some opinions on them here. So, first off, best football game ever, any league. This could be personal. It could be that you watched. Anything really. The ball's in our court here.
This is that we've watched or that we played in.
Watched.
Okay,
It's
so
tough.
one really jumps out at me, and it's because I've really been going back to it a lot lately. Um, 2021. I know what you guys are thinking. Hold on here. 2021 last year, Ohio State at Michigan. Now bear with me here, okay? I know the SEC is the dominant, conference, and there's a lot of great teams, and down there. Pac-12, obviously, we have a bias, and Big Ten, it's mostly a shootout every single year. You have a lot of good teams, and they all end up beating each other, and then the winner of that all goes to the playoffs, and they play Georgia or whatever happens. Um, but yeah, last year Ohio State at Michigan. Michigan hasn't won that matchup in years and years and years, and they're either getting blown out or it's a super close game. And I've just been going back and I've been watching videos and kind of like fan perspectives of that game. They're playing at the big house up at Michigan, and there's snow, and it's Michigan has a great team and they're really hungry for a win. Ohio State is a great team, and I think just something about that game in that atmosphere, for some reason, like deep down inside, like that's football to me, and like it's what makes college football so special. I love the NFL, and I think it's great, but there's just something about college football, and I think that game last year really encompasses like that feeling of like 109,000 people watching a football game in the snow. It's freezing, like all for their team. Michigan ends up winning, and end up going on to win the Big Ten championship against Iowa. It was a beautiful game. That's what it was. It was beautiful.
Yeah, man, those Big Ten cold Saturdays always has the perfect setting for a great football game. Just something different about it. I don't know why. And Chach had mentioned the little the neck. I don't know what you would call it. What do you
Like
guys
the
call those?
like the
I
like
want to.
it's like a
It's a
Like a hood or
hood.
like a
Yeah.
gator?
Yeah, like
Like
a hood. It's like a
yeah.
little hood. And they're always rocking those. Everyone's looking super clean. And the
Uh-huh.
game they're awesome. It's great setting. For me, I wanna put two out there for you boys. Um, Number one is pretty easy for me, and it's the Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl. Again, maybe a little bit of bias going into this, but also I think other people who aren't Steelers fan would back me up on this. Um, the James Harrison 100-yard interception return of the house was kind of an overlooked play in NFL history. I feel like that was just an insane play. And then everyone obviously knows the Santonio Holmes toe tap to win it at the end of the game after just going absolutely nutty to get them into that position. I think he had 3 or 4 catches on that drive. So that's everything that you could hope for in a Super Bowl and more coming down to the last drive of the game like that. And the Cardinals were on a mission that year, man. I think they were the wild card team that year.
Hmm.
Cinderella's story. And yeah, glad my Steelers were able to come out on top on that one.
Yeah.
Um, the second one I had, and it's kind of because of what was at stake. Rarely do you have a game where it's hyped up to be this crazy anomaly that's going to take place, and then it actually comes through and is that way where it's just a crazy competitive game that comes down to the last minute or two. Um, the Texas USC Rose Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
USC had everything to lose, and the show that Vince Young put on
Yeah.
during that game, unforgettable moment. Um, I think that would have been a three-peat for USC if they were able to come out with a win on that.
Hmm.
So those two are one and two, or 1A and 1B in my book.
Yeah, I've kind of got two as well here. Of course, got a little bias in me. Actually, both these are biased, but one is going to be the 2010 Saints Super Bowl. Um, you know, going there playing against Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. Um, and we're I think it's down by a touchdown coming out of halftime, and Sean Payton trots the boys out there and kicks an onside kick in the Super Bowl.
Uh-huh.
That was just next level for me, man. Nothing gets me more hyped than a good old onside kick, especially in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
um, and then the second part was actually a game I was able to see live. Ty and I got the opportunity to watch the 2019 Oregon game, the Oregon team at the Rose Bowl. They're playing Wisconsin. It ended up being a top 10 matchup. Um, and so we got to see Justin Herbert, the freaks on defense of that team. The cool uniforms, all that kind of stuff come together. And if anyone listening's ever been to a game at the Rose Bowl, it's called the great granddaddy of them all for a reason. There's 100,000 people at least in there, and it's loud, it's cool, it's one of the oldest stadiums there is. So yeah, those are gonna be my top two here, boys.
Yeah, that Rose
Great.
Bowl game was definitely really cool to go to. We got there early and watched the Rose Bowl parade, and then hung out in Pasadena for a while before making our way to the stadium. So that game was definitely an experience, and for the game to be as good as it was just the cherry on top, man. That was an awesome day.
For sure. It's kind of tuning into our second question here. Um, Favorite season of playing football? So, it could be youth football if that's what you're into. It could be high school football, college, whatever. So, for me, I'm gonna have to go to my senior year of high school. Um, just playing with all the boys that you grew up with one last time. It seems like it's really special. Um, Beat Garces, it's huge.
Hold on.
What?
Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Time out. Was this the Garces game you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, you can't just skim over that like it's not in a big deal. We beat Garces. Tell the people why that Garces game without sidetracking too much. Tell them why that Garces game was special.
Okay, so a little backstory. Garces is our absolute arch nemesis at Tehachapi High School. We had a coach back in the day, Gary Ogilvy, and then I believe he left Tehachapi to go coach at Garces. So it kind of sparked this little feud thing that we had going on. And so it's called the Ogilvy Bowl. There's a trophy, there's a whole thing. So my junior year went down to Garces 49-7, which is not very common. Just they completely wiped the floor with us. And then, so obviously the next year they have to come and play at Tehachapi. So, it's a full house. The place is rocking. I think I'm not sure this exact stats, but I think I had like 150 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns somewhere in that neck of the woods. And actually, special teams won us the game. We won by a walk-off field goal in overtime. So, um, my year of high school, they swapped overtime more to like a college style. You both get the ball at the 25, and then just like normal 4 downs. And they scored, they missed their kick, we scored, make our kick, and then the place goes nuts. And the whole trophy, storming the field, dumping Gatorade on the coach, and all that good stuff. So that's why that one's probably gonna have to take the cake for me here, boys.
Yeah, that was crazy, man.
Um,
Shmag, I was gonna say, I think I might have a
yeah,
hunch as to
yeah,
what yours is gonna be.
yeah. So, I mean, my senior year of high school is Cinderella story, and I could not have written. I mean, I don't think really anyone could have written that any better. Moving up to Division Two, we're the small school, all the schools that were going to be playing in playoffs. When we got to that point, way bigger than us. The talent pool's way bigger, and those teams had just crazy talent. Some going Division One and starting at the Division One level. Um, but just a really, not a whole lot of seniors on that team, but a really close group of guys that, two of my very best friends that I still talk to, to this day, played on that team and they'll remain, my friends for, the rest of forever. Shout out Ray and Skyler. Love you guys. Um, but yeah, man, that season was special, and beating Garces in the playoffs after they came up to our house, second game of the season, and wiped the floor with us, and then beating them in playoffs on their turf was just such a sweet moment on so many different levels. And then winning the whole thing, and getting the ring, and getting your painting up on the snack bar up at the top of Coy Burnett. It was, I mean, couldn't have written it any better, honestly.
Yeah, no, definitely a very special year for you guys. Your guys' senior class was nasty, and that junior class was maybe just as talented as well. And that kind of is going to be my segue into my favorite year of playing football, which is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be my sophomore year. Um, Logan had mentioned that in 2010, his class won CIF championship for the Central Section Division Two. Um, the following year, I'm a sophomore playing varsity, and now I'm on the team with all the juniors that were on his team. They're seniors now. I'm a sophomore. Um, those were the guys that I looked up to playing football my whole life. And now I'm on the same team as them. Uh, and furthermore, everyone else is the other teams are game planning for those guys because they're talented. They're the seniors. They're the guys that have been making plays the whole time. So I kind of just get to go out and play ball. Not much is expected out of me. So teams are trying to pick on me, and I was up to the challenge that year. Had some big plays, some highlight moments, and it was really cool to be able to step in and contribute to a team that was ready to rock and roll and ready to try to defend a CIF championship. So that year was was really nice and really cool for me to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I writing down this question, I knew what Schmags was going to be, so really just wanted to just say what me and TC had to say there.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, this last one's kind of a little two-parter here. So COVID has affected the sports world in many ways. And so our question here is, do you think COVID has any adverse effects on sports in general? And then the second part of it is, how would we have felt if we were going into our senior season of football and the whole thing just gets derailed?
Well, yeah, COVID had a huge impact on sports. Those 2020 seasons, that was weird, man. Watching pro and college games, and there's no fans in the stands. The excitement wasn't there. You usually hear the roar of the crowd when a big play goes down, and to not have that, it was weird, man. It didn't have the same oomph. You know what I mean? Not to mention NBA playing in a bubble, um, things of that nature, and then definitely a huge effect on the players as well. I remember when I caught COVID back in, I think it was March of 2020. Just getting back in the gym was a struggle. During my warm ups, I was out of breath for like you know, the first 2 weeks after having it. So it took me a while to come back. So I can imagine being a pro athlete. You catch it, you get better, and then you're trying to get back on the field. Your breathing isn't the same. You get fatigued quite quicker. So definitely a huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of take part B of that question, kind of putting myself in the position of those those high school players where it's your senior season and you're going into what could be a make or break year. I mean, it could be the difference between you getting I mean, I'll go with the most drastic here, getting a scholarship or not ever playing football ever again. I mean, in professional football, those guys are on contracts and, um, they're going to be back next season, as long as everything goes well. In college, NCAA, they gave everyone an extra year of eligibility, which really helped, some players that were getting ready to go on to the NFL or, maybe they lucked out, had an injury and they got to, sit out a year kind of thing. But high school, I mean, you don't get an extra year of eligibility. You don't get any of that. So I mean, for those of you, if there's anyone listening that's going into their, um, that all that was going down, going into your senior season. I mean, I feel for you. Especially because I mean, I had such a great senior season. I mean, I couldn't imagine, that not happening due to something like that. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's really tough. I really couldn't imagine. It's really hard to put myself in those shoes, but yeah, that's a tough one for sure.
Yeah, also to kind of piggyback on the adverse effects situation, you go to college, you have all these big expectations of how it's going to be, the place, you go to Michigan, you go to Florida to play at the big house or play in the swamp, play at Georgia between the hedges, you go to these places for the environment and you show up on campus, you work your ass off all summer in the 100-degree heat, and then it's game day and the seats are empty. There's no one there to watch, and so I can't imagine what that does to a recruit fighting for a spot, or even coaches. I can't imagine what the ripple effect was from just having to play a season, but not say it didn't count because it obviously did, but kind of just go backwards. And also, I think it completely before COVID, we were spoiled to what we had, you know, and now I think the adverse effect sort of is knowing how bad it could be, and life without
Mm-hmm.
sports or football or stuff of that nature. And yeah, I can't even begin to think of what it would have been like if it was me in high school having to miss my senior year of football. So, but yeah, that's all I've got for us here, boys. Unless you guys have any other thoughts on any questions or anything like that.
No, no. I mean, yeah, I think just going back to that a little bit. I think it was interesting that you bring up just from a coaching perspective too. I mean, I remember there were times when coaches, prepare all week to play, and then somebody gets sick and they're not in the game, and I mean, you're changing your scheme a day before the game, or even the day of a game. I mean, it's yeah, the ripple effect, like you were saying, is was just insane. But I'm happy we're all back on track now, and stadiums are full again, and um, it brings that atmosphere back to football, which is nice. So um, yeah, speaking of atmosphere, kind of shifting gears here a little bit. You guys want to get into our pickems for this week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So little preface here. This week we got some tough games on the docket here, and I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about some of these, because I think this is going to be our toughest week yet, and I think um, this is going to be a tough one. There are a lot of good games, but a tough week for pick'ems for sure.
Yeah. So, kicking us off here. Okay, before we get too deep into this first one here. So actually, I'll give the matchup and then I'll give my thoughts after that. So first here we got number 3 Alabama at number 6 Tennessee. Did you guys know how big of a deal this is?
I'm, I mean, it's the season for for
Not
both of
just
those
that, dude.
teams.
Like I never realized it, and until I was doing some research and looking into it a little more. So this is called the third Saturday in October rivalry. And if you go back to like I think it's sub like 2006 or something, this is the biggest game in the entire SEC. Now you're seeing more of Alabama, Georgia, and stuff. So anyone from the South or near there or anything, or is a little older to see some of the older college football stuff, I'm sure is acting like we're idiots punching the air right now. But I had no idea that this was such a big ordeal for the SEC, especially when these teams are so highly rated. The line's looking at minus 7.5 Bama here. So
Yeah, this is definitely one of the tougher picks on the docket for this week. Um, what stood out to me when I was doing my research, Alabama has won the last 15 matchups against Tennessee. 13 of those 15 have been by two or more touchdowns. So I think that's why, maybe we didn't realize this was such a big deal is because Alabama's been so dominant for so long. When you think about SEC rivalries, you think about Alabama Auburn, the you think about Florida and Georgia, right? Because those teams have been relevant in the past couple of decades here, whereas Tennessee seemed like it kind of fell off. Um, that being said, Tennessee just snapped their losing streak to Florida, so they're kind of looking like they're on a revenge tour. Um, for me, I'm gonna have to roll with Bama just because it's Bama. And it's kind of like picking against Tom Brady in that way, where if you pick with him, you're going to be right most of the time. So I can see this game going either way, but just for that fact, I got to roll with Bama.
Yeah, I mean, the tough,
yeah, and
tough
so
week.
the only other thing I had to add about this game real quick, Bryce Young's is uncertain for this game. I'm not sure if he's injured or what, but so his status is up in the air still. So with that being said, I think with Bryce Young, whether it's 80% of Bryce Young or 100% of Bryce Young, I'm liking Alabama here, but the line is starting to shift more towards Tennessee. It was minus 7.5 on Monday, and right before the pod, I looked again, and then we're already to minus 7. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so I mean, on this one, it's a tough one. I think Alabama. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, it kind of sets the scene or sets the stage for each team's trajectory for the rest of the year. I think Alabama can probably overcome a loss, but I don't know if Tennessee will be able to just because Alabama's Alabama and Tennessee doesn't have that same name.
Yeah, for sure. That's going to be a banger game. I'm not sure what time start it is, but for sure going to be flicking that one on the old TV on Saturday. So moving into our second game, we got number 7 USC at number 20 Utah. Line's looking at minus 3.5 Utah. That's what it was on Monday, and that's still what it is currently. So, um, really, that's just home field advantage that they're giving to the Utes. So they're giving them just about a field goal. USC, I am still not sold, man. They still lead the Pac-12 in turnovers, turnover differential, all that stuff, and so my question is, how are they going to react when their defense doesn't bail them out of every game? And Caleb Williams throws a pick or two. Their defense isn't creating 3 turnovers, and Utah is definitely the team that can do that to them. Very disciplined team. Kyle Whittingham always has his dudes in check and ready to go when it's game week. So I'm taking Utah by at least 10 here.
Wow. Well, I just want to ask, can you pick both teams to lose? Because I hate both of these teams. I just absolutely despise both of them. We know what Utah did to Oregon last year. USC is just giving me kind of rich kid vibes. We're better than you type of thing. Never been a fan of USC. Um, that being said, if I have to pick one, um, Utah has two losses, but they're two good teams that they lost to. Two competitive teams, at least. USC has had nothing but cupcakes on the schedule so far. They had the close game with Oregon State, which I don't think they're a great team. And then I guess the next best team they've played is Washington State, which, I think they're a solid team as well, but they haven't had any tough games really, any out of conference games or big matchups besides that. Um, that being said, I'm gonna have to roll with USC, and I know what you're thinking. Why would you do that? But it's for Oregon's sake, right? Because if we want Oregon to be high ranked at the end of the year, possibly have a chance at the college football playoff, we kind of need USC to be looking like a powerhouse going into the Pac-12 championship game, and for us to, if, take them out and get our seat in the playoff. So, for Oregon's sake, I'm rolling with USC.
Speaking of teams that are unproven, our next pick 'em here, we got 10 Penn State rolling into the big house at number 5 Michigan. Michigan's favored by a touchdown, and that line is not slid at all. Still holding at a touchdown here on Thursday night. So, yeah, I'm just not sold on the Michigan team. They have had cupcake after cupcake after cupcake, and then a real team like Maryland rolls in there, gives them a full 4 quarter game, and they pull out, a 6 point win. And Maryland is a solid team nonetheless, but is definitely not the pride of the Big Ten either. So, I'm not sold on Michigan, and also Penn State has a nasty padlock stat. When Sean Clifford, their quarterback, throws the ball under 15 times, they're 23-2. When he throws the ball more than 25 times, they are 1-5.
Wow.
So the numbers might be a little off. I forgot to write it down on my paper here, but it is something in that realm. And so when they are able to run the ball and kind of have a little 25 play script going on, they seem to do a lot better. But when they lean on Sean Clifford to improvise, things go a little sideways at times. I think I'm going to take Penn State by a field goal here. It's going to be one of those. I think it's a 9 a.m. kick, so it's not exactly the rockin' night game that you'd expect out of a game like this. But I'm liking Penn State here.
Yeah, man, this Big Ten is gonna get really interesting. You got Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan still all undefeated, and they're all gonna have to play each other. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that all plays out. Like you're saying, we don't know yet. We don't know who these teams are yet. You know what I mean? Um, Michigan had the close game against Maryland, who I know is a solid team, but not a powerhouse. Penn State had the dominant win over Auburn, and then Auburn turned out to be a little bit wishy washy. So you're kind of back to square one looking at the past records, right? Um, I know Michigan's at home, um, and both teams have great running backs this year, so it could really go either way. Um, but Michigan, in my books, kind of choke artists, man. And I think this is a prime setup for one of their choke jobs. So I'm rolling with Penn State. Shout out Joey Porter Jr. Looking like a lockdown corner out there. So just for his sake, I'm rolling with Penn State on this one. Yeah, I think it's going to tell a lot about both teams, and we'll be able to gauge where each team is headed after this one. Going in, it's just that unknown factor.
Yeah, I think every single one of these games on our pick'ems could flop either way, and I would not be surprised. The biggest line's 7, and that's an Alabama game. So, but anyways, rolling into our next one here, we got number 8 Oklahoma State at number 13 TCU. The model's given TCU 3.5 points. As of Monday, it is recently slid to 4. So it's as the week's going on here, it's liking TCU a little bit more, but still not a lot because usually 2 or 3 points is for home field advantage. So for them to just be sitting at 4 tells them it's going to be pretty dang tight. I've picked against TCU every time they've popped up on pick'ems, and think I'm gonna have to do that again. I'm gonna take Oklahoma State by a touchdown here. Seems like every year, Oklahoma State has a dominant run game and a very stingy front seven. And so I don't think TCU has been tested that heavily. They played Oklahoma, but do we even really know if Oklahoma has a Division I football team at this point? I don't know. So I'm liking Oklahoma State here.
Yeah, man, I definitely like the pick. These are two top five offenses, right? And this is the Big 12. This is going to be a shootout, typical Big 12 style. Um, One thing that swayed my opinion is last year's matchup, Oklahoma State 63, TCU 17. I think they kind of got their number a little bit. I'm rolling with Oklahoma State.
Yeah, gosh, man, these games are so hard to predict. Our next one is a little bit of a trap card. We got number 4 Clemson at Florida State. I know, Clemson this, Clemson that. We've seen it many times in the past. Not so recently as last year. This Clemson team had struggles at the quarterback position, pushing the ball down the field, and Florida State's not a bad team. The model's like in Clemson by 4, so it's gonna be tight. At least the model thinks so. I think Clemson's gonna win, but it's not gonna be a lot, and it's gonna be an eye opener to some of these people who are too high on Clemson.
Yeah. Wanted to answer your question by asking a question. Is Dabo still coaching at Clemson? And is DJ still the quarterback there? I got Clemson by a whole bunch on this one, boys. Um, after that NC State game, uh, I I think Clemson is back, and Florida State is just not it this year. So I think this one. I don't think the spread has it right on this one. I'm going with Schmag, Clemson by a whole bunch. Yeah, that place was jumping, man, and I like it how Dabo wins the race down the hill every time. Yeah.
That's what worries me though about this game is what happens when you take all that away and you don't have the crowd on your side and you don't have the this giant thing to keep you motivated. You know, the fans roaring on third down, and NC State is a pretty dang good team, but I mean, the recruiting talent isn't as high as some of these more top tier programs. So some of that stuff can get exposed, with crowd noise or not being on the same page, stuff like that. So I'm taking Clemson here. It's going to be a close one, I think, and I think it's going to open some eyes. So more to come. More to
No,
come.
no, I get it. It's kind of a trap card for Clemson because the ACC is not that strong and it hasn't been for a while, right? So you're hoping that they're not taking them lightly, but again, the ACC is just not that strong. So until they prove me otherwise, I got to go with the powerhouse Clemson, and we'll go from there.
For sure. Speaking of some powerhouses, next game on the slate is going to be LSU at Florida, both unranked. Models like in Florida by a field goal, and then it slipped to 2.5 since Monday to Thursday here. So, gosh, this is a tough one as well. I'm taking Florida for the simple fact they're at home. I think both these teams are very evenly matched. Um, big SEC power schools. I'm gonna take Florida here by a touchdown, maybe 10, something like that, something in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, man. Um, I'm liking Florida in this matchup as well. Um, I don't know. This one's kind of toss up for me as well. Florida beat Utah. Utah's kind of that stubborn mule that doesn't want to move anywhere and it's hard to beat. So that was an impressive victory. LSU let Auburn hang around for a while, and I don't think Auburn's that great of a team. So just based off past opponents, I guess I'm gonna have to roll Florida on this one. Not super confident on it, but let's go Gators. Yeah, it's kind of seeming like these two are kind of middle of the road SEC teams this year, so that's what makes this one tough. It's not the big powerhouse matchup. It can kind of go either way with them being middle of the road. Yeah,
Man,
exactly.
we're gonna have to keep Schmag picking at the end here because he is wiping the floor with the pickums, man. He's 11 for 12 through 2 weeks here. So we got to let Schmag go at the end here. So meantime, don't start poaching picks off of him because it seems like everything he touches turns to gold at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was kind of down in the dumps knowing that Oregon wasn't going to be playing this year, but this slate of games kind of made it all better. Not to say, um, you know, that I'm excited that Oregon is not playing, but this is a nice little consolation prize at least to have this slate of games. Yeah, that's going to be a game to figure out who's who in the Pac-12, right?
yeah. So that's gonna wrap it for pickums here. One thing I wanted to touch on in the pro scene a little bit. What is going on with the Las Vegas Raiders?
Man, it's a experiment gone wrong. It looks like, you know. We all remember the Chip Kelly Eagles, and they went out and signed all the free agents, and it didn't pan out the way it was supposed to. Um, this could be the start of something like that. But hey, we're still early, and they're gonna get another shot at a lot of these AFC West teams. So I think it's too late to give up hope completely. But man, it's just not looking good. What do you guys think?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it could come with the sample size, kind of. You know, you got Kansas City in there. I believe they played the Broncos already, um, and the Chargers also. And so that's three out of their. That's all the other three division opponents in the AFC West. The only thing that gets scary is being in the AFC. You got, the Bills are in that. You got the Bengals. You got, the Steelers, who might be down bad a little bit right now, but their defense can certainly win them some big games later in the year. And then you got,
Baltimore, Miami.
yeah, the Chargers, the Broncos could flip it around. That's like almost 10 teams already. So, yeah, it's looking scary. They need to try to stop the bleeding here soon and get this thing flipped around and moving in the right direction. You got the talent, so it's kind of put up or shut up time at this point.
Yeah, I got a question for you guys because this might answer the whole Raiders debate. Is we know it's hard to win in the NFL without a top tier quarterback. Where are you ranking Derek Carr as far as AFC West teams with the Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, and Raiders?
Are we talking all time or this
No,
season?
no, no. I'm saying this season,
Okay,
who's got the best quarterback going
okay,
in?
okay, okay, okay.
Because for me, Pat Mahomes still has the number one spot. Obviously, he's probably number one in the league. Him or Josh Allen. Number two, our man Jay Herb playing with the Chargers. And then three or four is kind of toss up between Derek Carr and Russell Wilson. Based off the pass, you got to go with Russ, but I mean this year he's not playing up to snuff, so you got to think he's either maybe three or four in his own division as far as QB rankings. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was gonna say that same exact list basically. It's hard to kind of put it any other way than that. It seems like Derek Carr is serviceable. I'd say he's above average, kind of in that neck of the woods. He's not going to make the plays that Justin Herbert can stretch the ball down the field or Patrick Mahomes makes, a highlight reel play, it seems, every week. Or I don't know if that has to do with the media also, but a little bit of that mixed in. Um, it seems like Derek Carr is more of a kind of one of those guys who had to work twice as hard for everything that the dudes with the Justin Herbert with the 6'6" frame, 240 pounds. Mahomes has the length as well, and so I don't know, man. I don't know where this Raider team is going to go. It seems like it's kind of going to go as far as Derek Carr can take them. So, which has really
Yeah,
almost been the issue for the Raiders since the longest I can remember, because they had some super rough years, so obviously that means you're getting high draft picks. But once you're 3 or 4 years into rough years, you say, "Wow, we have a lot of talent on this team." But it seemed like no one could figure out how to kind of put the jigsaw pieces together and make them all mesh, which is probably 75% of the battle. But so
yeah, it's tough to win with just a serviceable quarterback. Look at the Vikings, right? Absolutely loaded roster. Um, we had already mentioned it, but two top five guys on the offense at their positions with Cooks and Jefferson, right? Um, so it's tough, man. They haven't been able to get over the hump um, in the Green Bay Packers yet, and their roster is loaded. It seems like when you just have a serviceable quarterback, your other positions have to tower over the competition for you to be competitive. And I don't know if the Raiders are there yet, especially in that division that's so loaded this year.
yeah, I mean, any NFL teams we're surprised about? I mean, obviously we got the top dogs, the Bills, Chiefs, etc. Anyone you're shocked is trending downwards or upwards? I've kind of got the Cowboys. Dak goes down week one. I mean, that's a train wreck on wheels right there. That's a easy way to go 1-5 and, already be so behind, especially with the Eagles in your division. Then, you're already down to fighting for a wild card spot. But, Cooper Rush coming in, doing what he needs to do, defensive talent winning you some games, which is, we keep talking about earlier in the year. You need your talent to win you a few games. And it seems like the Cowboys are getting that.
Yeah, man. I wanted to go to both of the New York teams. Obviously, the Giants with a massive win over the Packers in London this past Sunday. They've had a really impressive showing so far. Saquon's back and running like nothing ever happened. That same dominant force that we knew before the injury. And then the Jets, man, they've come out and surprised me a little bit. I know they're still hovering right around that 500 mark, but um, obviously beat up on my Steelers, and I believe they have a win over the Bengals as well. Kind of like you were saying with the Raiders, they've had all those draft picks for so many years, and it seems like they might be climbing up that hill, ready to maybe take that next jump into that next tier of teams. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens with those Jets with Zach Wilson coming back. Is he that guy or not? Time to find out. Yeah, I just wanted to say some teams that had surprised me in the downward direction. Um, Cardinals. Um, Obviously, my Pittsburgh Steelers not off to the greatest start. Um, Broncos, and then the Indianapolis Colts. What is going on in Indy, man? I know Jonathan Taylor didn't play last week, but even when he was playing, that offense just looks out of sorts.
Yeah, it's shocking, man. You know, you got Jonathan Taylor. He might have passed 2,000 rushing yards last year. He was right on the nose if he did. You know, you got him. You got Michael Pittman, a tall vertical threat who can run down the field. You know, Marlon Mack, Naheem Hines. The defense. Then you got DeForest Buckner. Um, and then you got Darius Leonard. I think he switched his name now, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But you know, he's a freak athlete. Then you throw bump and run Gilmore on the back end. You're saying, you know, what are the Super Bowl odds and where do I put my money, you know? And then they come out and tie the Texans, lose outright to the Jaguars, you know? It's shocking to say the least, man. I thought they were for sure going to be a dominant force, but
Yeah, who's top dog right now? Number one team, looking like the powerhouse. You know, we had all said the Bills. I think it was in our first podcast. Is it still the Bills for you guys? Has your opinion changed?
yeah, I'm gonna have to stick with the Bills for now, at least. It seems like once the rock is rolling for the Bills, it is very hard to stop. You know, once they get these things clicking and stuff, you know, if you can catch them off guard, they're susceptible to losing a game. But, you know, if you even let them play for a quarter, things just get out of hand so fast. And they just have the ability to lock you in these situations of throwing the ball over and over and over again because their offense is seemingly scoring at will. So I'm going to have to say that stick with the Bills here.
Yeah, man. My pick might seem like it's coming out of left field a little bit as far as this year goes, but um, I do like the Bills. But I'm also really liking their opponent this week in the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are a very scary team this year. People were overlooking them coming in. You know, losing Tyreek Hill, didn't know how that was going to work out, but I think Pat Mahomes is showing that because he's still a young player. I think people forget that. He is maturing and he's learning to read defenses and not just chuck it up to Tyreek every play. And so, you know, a little bit more scheme involved this year, it seems like. And I'm really liking them, man. I think they're going to prove a lot of people wrong. And definitely do not take the Chiefs lightly.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got anything else here? Anything else you want to wrap up with here?
No, yeah, definitely. You know, you figure if you can get a win in these next two games, they're going to be looking really, really nice come playoff seeding time. So, it's time to start peaking. The time is right for that, and let's head into playoffs looking strong.
Yeah, if you can buy a few games on the mountain before you gotta head down to the valley, definitely clutch in the playoffs, man. These kids from the valley don't know how to handle the cold, and man, when it's cold at night and they can see their own breath, and then they're you know getting hit the way that Tehachapi football does, it it makes them wanna quit football, honestly. So, um, so yeah, that's all I got for the night here, boys.
Yeah, man.
All right, guys, that is effectively gonna do it for episode 3 of the Keep It Down podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Keep It Down Pod. We're going to be posting stories, ask us questions for Q&As, or if you even want to, drop a top 5 running backs from the 2000s in the comments of our post for this podcast here, you're more than welcome to do that. We're always up for some debating. So, yeah, check us out. Like I said, in the Instagram bio, there's our link tree. Take you right to our Spotify page and or our Zencaster page if that's where you prefer to listen. Make sure to follow, subscribe, give us 5 stars, all that good stuff. And catch you boys next time.